The thing about driving mountain roads on New Year's Eve is the silence. Everyone's at parties, getting drunk, counting down to midnight like it means something. Me, I was driving home alone at 11:30 p.m. because I'd made the responsible choice. 1 beer, 2 hours, time to leave before things got messy. My dog needed to be let out anyway. The mountain road stretched ahead like a black ribbon, my headlights the only illumination for miles. Down in the valleys, fireworks were already starting, early celebrators who couldn't wait for midnight. They looked like distant flowers blooming in the darkness, their muffled pops reaching me seconds after the light. Beautiful in a lonely sort of way. I'd been driving for maybe 20 minutes when I saw the first one. Not saw exactly. More like my headlights caught something standing in the road ahead, and my brain needed several seconds to process what my eyes were reporting. A figure, human-shaped, standing perfectly still in the middle of my lane. I hit the brakes instinct, and the truck slewed slightly on the cold pavement before stopping maybe 30 feet away. The figure didn't move, didn't react to the lights or the sound of my engine idling, just stood there. Details emerged as I stared. Bare feet on frozen asphalt. Clothing that looked wrong, pieces of different materials stitched together without regard for fit or function, hanging in strips and patches. Arms at their sides, but the posture was off. Too straight, too rigid. The face was turned toward me, I think. But where there should have been eyes catching my headlights, there was just darkness. Shadow where features should be. I laid on the horn. Nothing. No flinch, no response. My hand went to my phone before I remembered. No service. Never was out here. I was 10 miles from the last town, 15 from the next. Just me and whatever was standing in my road. I made a decision. Swerved into the left lane, gave them a wide berth, accelerated past. As I drew level, I couldn't help but look. The head tracked my movement, following my truck as I passed, but the body stayed motionless. Up close, I could see the clothing was rotted, patched together with what looked like plant fiber and other things. Things I couldn't identify and didn't want to. Then I saw the others. 2 more in the trees to my right, 4 behind them deeper in the forest, all standing the same way, all facing the road, all watching. I punched the accelerator. The truck's V8 roared and I focused on the road ahead, hands tight on the wheel. Trick of the light, I told myself. Shadows and tired eyes. I'd been up since 5 a.m. for a 12-hour shift. My brain was filling in details that weren't there, but I couldn't stop myself from checking the rearview mirror. They were following, not walking, running. But not like people run. This was something else. A loping, wrong-jointed gait that covered ground impossibly fast. Like their knees bent in extra places, or their legs were longer than they should be. They moved in and out of the darkness beyond my taillights, and I caught glimpses. 6 of them, now 8, staying pace with my truck even as I pushed it to 50, then 60 on a road designed for 35. The fireworks were getting more frequent now. 11:45 p.m., 15 minutes to midnight. Every explosion lit up the forest in brief, strobing flashes of red and gold and white. And in those flashes, I could see them, dozens, running parallel to the road on both sides, keeping pace. Some were in the trees, in them, climbing and leaping between branches with that same wrong-jointed fluidity. Others ran along the ground in a pack formation, all of them moving in coordinated silence. Not silence, I realized with dawning horror. They were making sounds. But I'd been mistaking them for fireworks. Those sharp, popping vocalizations, those whistles and bangs. They were communicating under cover of the celebration, and I'd been too focused on driving to notice. My speedometer read 70. The truck shuddered on turns, tires screaming. I didn't care. The next town was 5 miles ahead, Pritchard, population 800, gas station and diner and people. Witnesses, safety, 4 miles. The fireworks reached a crescendo, midnight approaching. In the valleys below, entire towns were lighting up the sky. The noise was constant now, overlapping explosions that made the air vibrate. 3 miles. I saw one cross the road ahead, a blur of motion from left to right, there and gone. Then another behind me. They were bracketing me, I realized, hurting me. 2 miles. That's when I felt the thump, a soft, deliberate impact against the truck bed. Something had landed in the back. I swerved, hoping to throw it out. The figure I caught a glimpse in my rear view, simply crouched lower, gripping the truck bed with hands and feet, body pressed flat like a spider. Then it moved to the rear window. I could feel it back there, separated from me by a thin panel of glass. The truck had one of those sliding rear windows, and I watched in paralyzed terror as fingers appeared at the edge, 2 long fingers with blackened nails, and began to pull. The glass slid. Inch by inch, 1 mile, I could see the lights of Pritchard ahead, the glow of the gas station, the diner's neon sign. The rear window was halfway open now. A smell poured through, earth and rot and something acrid that made my eyes water. I heard breathing that wasn't breathing, this wet, rhythmic sound that came in patterns I couldn't predict. 1/2 mile. The countdown started. I could hear it echoing from Pritchard, the whole town yelling together. 10, 9, 8. The thing in my truck bed pushed its head through the opening. 7, 6, 5. I couldn't see it. Refused to look. Just focused on the lights ahead, on the promise of civilization and witnesses, and 4, 3, 2. My front right tire exploded. The truck lurched hard to the right. I fought the wheel, managed to keep it from rolling, but momentum carried us into the ditch. We hit with a bone-jarring crash that deployed the airbag and filled the cab with white powder and the smell of chemicals. 1. Happy New Year. The fireworks reached their peak. Every valley, every hollow, every town within sight was launching their finale. The sky lit up like day, colors cascading overhead in waves. The noise was deafening, and in that noise I heard them. All around my truck they were gathering. I couldn't see them through the airbag deflating in my face, through my watering eyes and disorientation. But I could hear them over the fireworks, could feel the truck rocking as they surrounded it. I fumbled for my door handle. It was jammed. The impact had crushed the frame. I tried the passenger side, same thing. The rear window was fully open now. I scrambled into the passenger seat, away from that opening, and grabbed my phone even though I knew it was useless. Dead battery. I'd been meaning to replace it. The fireworks continued. 3 minutes after midnight now. The displays were winding down, the gaps between explosions growing longer. In those gaps, I heard their vocalizations clearly. Not mimicking the fireworks anymore, communicating, organizing. I pressed myself against the passenger door and finally forced myself to look at the rear window. The thing that looked back wasn't human, had never been human, I thought. The face was too long, the jaw wrong. The eyes caught the distant fireworks and threw back light that wasn't reflection. It was something else, something internal. It studied me. Tilted its head in a gesture that seemed curious, almost friendly. Then it reached through the window with an arm that stretched impossibly, joints bending in ways that made my stomach turn, and its fingers touched the passenger seat inches from my leg. I screamed. It jerked back and I swear I heard something like laughter. Multiple voices in that wet, clicking vocalization pattern. They thought my fear was funny. The truck rocked harder. They were trying to flip it. I don't remember making the decision. My body just moved. I kicked at the windshield, already cracked from the impact, with both feet. 3 kicks and it shattered outward. I dove through the opening, feeling glass tear my jacket and pants, not caring. I hit the ground and ran. The fireworks had almost stopped now. Just occasional distant pops. My footsteps on the gravel road sounded impossibly loud. Behind me, I heard them leaving the truck, pursuing, but something was different. The lights of Pritchard were visible ahead, maybe a 1/4 mile. Close enough to see the shapes of buildings, the gas station pumps, a few people still outside celebrating. Close enough to be seen from. I glanced back once. They'd stopped at the edge of the tree line, maybe 50 feet from my wrecked truck. Just standing there. Watching me run toward town. They didn't follow onto the open road where I might be witnessed. Didn't pursue me into the lights. I staggered into Pritchard at 12:14 a.m. I remember the time because I checked the gas station clock, needed something normal and concrete to hold onto. People stared at me. Blood on my face from glass cuts, clothes torn, gasping like I'd run a marathon. Car accident, I managed. Mile back in the ditch. They got the sheriff. He drove me back at 12:30, three other men with him, all armed. My truck was there, crushed in the ditch exactly where I'd left it. The rear window was open. There were muddy prints in the truck bed, barefoot, human-shaped but wrong. The sheriff took photos, measured them, didn't say anything. My front tire had blown, yes. But when they examined it in daylight the next morning, they found it hadn't been a normal blowout. Something had punctured it, something sharp. The jack that should have been in my truck bed was gone. They towed my truck to the gas station. I stayed in Pritchard that night. The diner owner offered their guest room, wouldn't take no for an answer. Gave me tea that tasted like herbs and honey, watched me with eyes that said they'd heard stories like mine before. "They come out on New Year's," she said quietly. "And the solstices, and sometimes just because. Used to be everyone knew to be inside after dark on certain nights, but people forget, or they don't believe." I spent New Year's Day getting my truck fixed. The mechanic found scratches on the roof, long, parallel gouges like something with claws had been up there. He didn't comment on them, just sanded them down and repainted. I drove home on January 2nd, daylight only. Took the highway instead of the mountain road. Added 50 miles to the trip. I didn't care. My dog was fine, neighbor had checked on him. Life continued. Went back to work, told people I'd had a rough New Year's, left out the details, but now I know. There are things in the deep mountains that aren't wildlife, aren't lost hikers. There's something else, something that's learned to use our sounds against us. That hunts in packs with intelligence and planning. And they're patient. Sometimes late at night, I hear fireworks in the distance, someone's random celebration, and I find myself checking the windows. Making sure the doors are locked, listening for sounds that don't quite fit. Because I know what they taught me that night. The fireworks we set off in celebration, they hear as cover. The noise we make in joy, they use as camouflage. While we're looking at the sky, counting down to new beginnings, they're watching from the darkness, waiting for someone to drive home alone. I never do anymore. The listing described it as authentic Appalachian experience with total privacy and stunning mountain views. What it didn't mention was that there was no cell service for 8 miles. The nearest neighbor was somewhere we'd never see, and the driveway was less a road and more a suggestion carved through overgrown forest. "It's perfect," Sarah said as we pulled up at 6 p.m. on December 31st. The cabin emerged from the fog like something from a postcard. Log construction, stone chimney, wide porch with rocking chairs. Rustic charm in every carefully photographed detail. The reality was colder, literally and figuratively. The cabin was clean, I'll give it that. Almost aggressively clean for a place that supposedly hadn't been rented in 3 months according to the booking calendar. The floors were swept, the windows spotless, the bathroom scrubbed sterile. But there were details that didn't fit. Fresh mud tracks under the kitchen sink, where someone would crouch to check the pipes. The tracks had been partially wiped away but not completely. Bare footprints, human-sized, pressed into the linoleum. Scratches on the inside of the bedroom window. Not outside where branches might scrape, inside. Long, parallel marks in the wood frame like someone had been trying to get out. Or like something had been trying to remove the locks. The bathroom door had a bolt lock from the outside. You could lock someone in but not yourself in for privacy. Probably just old hardware, Sarah reasoned when I pointed it out. Place is vintage, probably nothing works right. She was trying to convince herself as much as me. This trip had been her idea. Romantic New Year's Eve, just us, away from family obligations and crowded bars. A chance to start the year together, quiet and intentional. I'd agreed because I loved her and because it sounded good in theory. Theory and practice, I was learning, are very different things. We unpacked groceries, opened the champagne we'd brought, got the fire going. By 8 p.m., the cabin was warm and the atmosphere was improving. We made dinner, played cards, avoided talking about the weird details. Sometimes ignorance feels like safety. Sarah found the photographs at 9:30. She'd been looking for extra blankets and discovered a loose board in the bedroom closet, the kind of feature that seems charming in an old cabin. Hidden storage, she'd said with delight, pulling the board free. Her face changed when she saw what was inside. Polaroids, dozens of them rubber-banded in stacks, all showing the cabin from outside, taken from the tree line at different times. Different seasons, summer green, fall colors, winter bare branches. Different times of day, dawn light, noon brightness, dusk glow, deep night. Always the same angle, always focused on the windows. Some were old, their colors faded. Some were recent. We could tell by the new awning over the porch, installed this past spring according to the listing. The most recent showed our car parked in the driveway. The most recent had been taken less than an hour ago. "Someone's fucking with us," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Another guest left these." "Has to be." But Sarah was looking through them with increasingly pale face, and when she handed me a stack, I understood why. The photos were sequential. A record. In the summer shots, you could see people inside through the windows, just silhouettes, but there. In the fall shots, different people. Each stack of photos seemed to document a different set of renters, taken over multiple days of their stays. We were being cataloged, observed. Someone had been watching every person who stayed here, documenting them in methodical detail. "We're leaving," Sarah said. Not a discussion, a statement. I agreed immediately. We threw our stuff into bags without bothering to fold anything, turned off the lights, locked the door behind us. The porch stairs creaked under our feet, and the sound seemed to echo in the fog that had thickened since sunset. The car was 30 feet away, might as well have been 30 miles. Sarah reached it first, tried her door. Locked, good, we'd locked it. She pulled out her keys, pressed the button. Nothing. The familiar chirp didn't sound. "Battery's dead," I said, trying mine. Same result. No response from the car at all. Both key fobs. Sarah's voice was climbing. That's not normal wear, that's." She didn't finish because we both heard it. A sound from the tree line, not an animal sound. Something between a cough and a call, this deliberate vocalization that carried through the fog with perfect clarity. It was answered from a different direction. Then another. Then several at once, surrounding the cabin in a rough circle. "Inside," I whispered. "Back inside, now." We ran for the cabin. I fumbled with the key, hands shaking, while Sarah pressed against my back, and those sounds continued in the trees. Closer now, taking turns, patterns I couldn't decipher but knew were communication. The lock finally turned. We crashed through the door, slammed it shut, threw the deadbolt, dragged a chair under the knob for good measure. Then we stood in the dark cabin, breathing hard, listening. Silence for maybe 10 seconds. Then footsteps. On the porch. Multiple sets. Walking in patterns. One would move from left to right, stop, return. Another would cross from the stairs to the window, pause, come back. Over and over, the same paths, like they were mapping the space. Learning it. Sarah grabbed my hand. Her palm was slick with sweat. We moved deeper into the cabin, away from the windows, and huddled in the hallway between the bedroom and bathroom, the most interior space available. "The phone," Sarah whispered. "The listing said there was a landline, emergency backup." I'd seen it in the kitchen, an old rotary model mounted on the wall. Vintage charm that might actually be useful. I nodded, started to move toward the kitchen. A face appeared in the window. I froze. It was there for maybe 2 seconds, pressed against the glass, breath fogging the pain. Features were wrong, too long. Eyes that caught the dim firelight and threw it back wrong. Then it dropped from view. Gone. But I knew it hadn't left, just moved. I heard it a moment later, testing the back door. Not rattling the knob violently, but turning it slowly. Learning the mechanism. The deadbolt held, but I heard the creature move to the window next to the door, heard its hands. I assumed they were hands exploring the frame. "The phone," Sarah urged. I made it to the kitchen in 3 quick steps, grabbed the receiver, held it to my ear. Nothing. Dead line. I clicked the cradle multiple times. Absolutely nothing. Of course, why would there be service? Why would anything work the way it was supposed to? The creatures, I couldn't think of them as anything else now, had moved around to the bedroom. I heard them opening the shutters we'd closed, heard them scratching at the glass, not trying to break it. Testing it, assessing it. What do they want? Sarah's voice was almost inaudible. I didn't answer because I didn't know, and anything I said would be a guess that might be worse than her imagination. The scratching stopped at 10:15. The footsteps on the porch ceased. For 5 minutes, we heard nothing. Then they started calling, not to each other this time, to us. They mimicked human voices. Not perfectly, there was something off about the pitch, the resonance, but close enough to be deeply disturbing. A man's voice saying hello. A woman's voice calling help me. A child's voice crying. Each call came from a different location around the cabin. They were taking turns, trying different approaches, seeing what would make us respond, make us open the door, make us come outside. "Don't listen," I told Sarah. "It's not real, none of it is real." But when one of them mimicked Sarah's mother's voice, her exact voice, saying Sarah's name in the exact tone her mother used when worried, Sarah made a small, wounded sound. "How did they?" she started. "They didn't. They can't. It's just sounds. Random sounds that happen to." I stopped because I knew I was lying. That was too accurate to be random. Somehow they'd learned her mother's voice, maybe from videos on Sarah's phone, but her phone was in her pocket, unless they'd been listening before. When we were unpacking, talking, playing those videos we'd watched during dinner to pass time. The cabin windows weren't thick. Sound carried. They'd been studying us since we arrived, maybe before. The mimicry continued until 11:00 p.m., then stopped. Another period of silence that was somehow worse than the noise. In that quiet, every tiny sound became significant. The settling of the cabin, the wind in the chimney, our own breathing. At 11:30, something new started. Scratching, but not at the doors or windows, in the walls, moving through the crawl space under the cabin. Multiple sources, moving independently, circling in the confined space beneath our feet. "They're trying to get under," Sarah said unnecessarily. The cabin was old. The floor was sturdy, but there were gaps, ventilation grates, utility access points. Places where something thin enough, flexible enough, patient enough might find entry. I grabbed the heaviest things I could find, cast iron pans, fireplace tools, and we moved through the cabin in the semi-darkness, blocking every floor vent with weighted obstacles. It felt futile, but doing something was better than waiting. At 11:45, fireworks started echoing from distant valleys. Civilizations celebrating, communities gathering, people counting down in warmth and light. Out here, we were alone with things that used our own sounds against us. The creatures responded to the fireworks. Every explosion was mimicked within seconds, not just copied, but layered. They were creating harmonics, overlapping the sounds until I couldn't distinguish real from false. The noise surrounded the cabin in waves. Under cover of that sound, they intensified their assault. The scratching in the walls became aggressive. The testing of doors and windows became forceful. They were using the fireworks as camouflage, just like they'd used human voices as bait. Midnight arrived. The countdown that we'd imagined doing together, champagne in hand, celebrating our future. Instead, we were pressed into the bathroom, the room with a bolt lock that only worked from outside, which we'd wedged shut from inside with towels and brute force. The fireworks reached their crescendo. Every valley, every town within hearing range launched their finale. The noise was overwhelming, constant. And in that noise, something broke. I heard it from the bedroom, glass shattering. Not a window, something smaller. Then the sound of something landing inside, moving. Sarah heard it too. She grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. The thing in the cabin moved through the rooms. I could track its progress by sound, the creak of floorboards, the whisper of movement. It was searching. Kitchen first, then living room, getting closer. It reached the hallway outside the bathroom, stopped. The doorknob turned, slowly, testing. The lock held, the towels held. The door rattled but didn't open. Then silence. For maybe 30 seconds, nothing. When it spoke, the voice came from directly outside the door. Sarah's voice. My voice. Our voices layered together, saying things we'd said to each other earlier. I love you, and this is perfect and just us. Our words played back at us from something that wasn't us. Sarah was crying silently, face buried in my shoulder. I held her and stared at the door and waited. At 12:30 a.m. it left. I heard it moving back through the cabin, heard the sounds of it exiting through whatever entry it had found. The scratching in the walls stopped. The footsteps on the porch ceased. By 1:00 a.m., the fog began to lift. Moonlight penetrated the clouds, brightening the darkness. By 2:00 a.m., we heard nothing. No calls, no scratching, no mimicry. We stayed in the bathroom until dawn. When light finally broke, real, genuine sunrise, I carefully opened the door. The cabin was destroyed, not violently but methodically. Every cabinet opened, every drawer pulled, every item moved and examined and left scattered. They'd been searching for something, or cataloging, studying how we lived. The bedroom window was broken. That was how they'd gotten in. On the floor below it lay a Polaroid camera, old model, instant film. The kind that had taken those photos hidden in the closet. It wasn't their camera, I realized. It was the cabin owner's camera. They'd been using it, had learned how it worked. We're adding to the collection. Our car started on the first try. Both key fobs worked perfectly. Whatever had drained them had released them. We drove down that overgrown driveway at 6:30 a.m., not speaking, not looking back. I had my phone in my hand, watching the bars, waiting for the moment service returned. It came 8 miles later, exactly where the listing had said it would. I pulled over, hands shaking too badly to drive safely. Sarah was already leaving a review, 1 star. Text that said simply, "They let us leave." The host responded within an hour. "So glad you enjoyed your stay. Hope you'll come back." Like they hadn't read what she'd written. Or like they had, and that was their way of saying, "We know. Everyone who stays knows eventually." But they keep coming because they don't believe the warnings. Because authentic Appalachian experience sounds charming until you understand what it means. We drove home in daylight, stopped only for gas in populated areas, didn't speak about it until we were back in our apartment with locks that worked properly and neighbors on all sides. "We report it, right?" Sarah asked. "Tell someone." "Tell them what? That we stayed in a cabin and got scared. That we think something was watching us, but we have no proof except some old photos that could be explained away." She didn't answer because she knew I was right. We had a broken window and scattered belongings and trauma that would take months to process. We had no evidence that anyone would take seriously. The listing is still up. I check sometimes. The reviews are consistently positive, except for the occasional 1 star that says something cryptic. Not what we expected. Would not return. They let us leave. No one ever explains further. No one describes what happens in detail. Because how do you explain it in a way that sounds rational? You don't. You just warn others in whatever subtle way you can and hope someone listens. We didn't. Someone else won't either. The cabin stays booked. New Year's Eve slots fill up fast. People looking for that authentic experience, that total privacy, those stunning views. They'll get all 3. And something more they didn't anticipate. Something that watches from the trees. Something that learns. Something that documents each new arrival with patient, methodical interest. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, lets them leave. "Mommy, there are people in the yard." Those were the words. 5 words that ended the normal part of my life and began whatever this is. Emma stood in our bedroom doorway at 11:45 p.m. on New Year's Eve, her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest, her 8-year-old face serious in the way children get when they're certain of something adults will dismiss. "It's just shadows, baby," my husband Mark said without looking up from his phone. He was checking the countdown. We'd promised the kids they could stay up until midnight, a special treat. "Everyone's at parties. No one's outside." "There are people in the yard," Emma repeated. Same tone, same certainty. "They're just standing there." Mark sighed, put down his phone, gave me a look that said, "Handle this." But something in Emma's face made me get up instead of dismissing her. She wasn't scared, not yet. She was confused, like she'd seen something that didn't make sense and needed adult interpretation. I followed her to her bedroom window. Her room faced the backyard, looking out over the acre of grass that sloped down to the tree line. We'd lived here for 12 years, Generational property, my grandfather's house, edge of national forest land. Our kids had grown up playing in those woods. "Show me," I said. Emma pointed. "There and over there." I looked. At first, I saw nothing. Just our backyard in darkness, the trees beyond, a few stars visible in the cold, clear sky. Then my eyes adjusted, and I understood what she meant. They weren't hidden. They were just still. So motionless that my brain had categorized them as part of the landscape. Fence posts, garden sculptures, natural features. But they weren't any of those things. They were people, or person-shaped things, standing in our yard, 7 of them that I could see, arranged in no pattern I recognized. Some near the shed, some by the garden, 2 right at the tree line, just standing, facing the house. "How long have they been there?" I asked quietly. "I don't know. I got up to look at the fireworks and saw them." "Mommy, why aren't they moving?" Good question, great question. I didn't have an answer. I went back to our bedroom. "Mark, come here." Something in my voice made him put the phone down immediately. When I showed him, his face went through the same progression mine had: confusion, dismissal, adjustment, recognition. "What the fuck?" he whispered. "Language," I said automatically, uselessly. "I'll go check." He was already moving, pulling on jeans, grabbing the flashlight from the nightstand. "Mark." "It's probably kids, pranks, New Year's bullshit." But his voice said he didn't believe it. I watched from the window as he went outside, watched the flashlight beam sweep across the yard, watched it find the first figure and stop. Mark went completely still. The flashlight stayed pointed at the same spot for 10, 15, 20 seconds. Then he moved it to the next figure, and the next. He didn't approach them, didn't call out. Just stood there on our back porch, illuminating them one by one, and even from a distance I could see the tension in his body. When he came back inside, he didn't say anything. Just locked the door behind him, closed the curtain, walked past me to our bedroom. I followed. He took the rifle from the closet, the one he kept for coyotes, unloaded, safely stored, started loading it with hands that were almost steady. "Mark, what?" "Get the kids into the bathroom. Interior room, no windows. Don't let them see." "See what? What's out there?" He looked at me then, and his eyes were strange. "I don't know, but there are more than 7. There are at least 20, and they're arranged in a circle around the house." My stomach dropped. "That's not possible." "We would have seen." "They're standing between bushes behind the shed in shadows, camouflaged, but they're there." He finished loading the rifle. "Get the kids, now, please." I collected Emma and her brother Jack, 10 years old, already asking questions about why Dad looked weird. Herded them into the master bathroom, the one with no exterior walls. Told them it was a game, special midnight hide-and-seek, the kind where being quiet wins prizes. They didn't believe me. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for. "What's in the yard?" Jack asked. "Probably nothing, probably." "They were closer when I looked again," Emma interrupted. "The ones by the shed. They were at the tree line before, now they're by the shed." Oh God. I left the kids in the bathroom with strict instructions not to come out and found Mark in the living room. Every curtain drawn, every door locked, lights off. He was moving through the house in darkness, checking windows, and I followed his path. "Mark, talk to me." "They've surrounded us, complete circle, and they're getting closer. Not walking, just when I look away and look back, they're in a new position. Like," he struggled for words, "like they're only moving when we can't see them." "That's impossible." "Yeah, so is 30 people standing silent in our yard at midnight on New Year's Eve. But here we are." Fireworks started echoing from distant towns. The kids would want to see, we'd promised them. "Go back to the bathroom," Mark said. "Stay with them, I'll keep watch." "I'm not leaving you. One of us needs to be with the kids if..." He didn't finish, didn't need to. I went back to the bathroom. Jack was at the door, ear pressed against it. "I heard Dad say there are 30 people outside." "It's fine, it's..." "Is it the feral people?" Jack asked. Everything stopped. "What?" "The feral people. Tommy at school said his uncle saw them in the mountains. People who went wild and live in the woods and come out sometimes. He said they took someone once. His uncle said to stay inside if you ever see them just standing around because that means they're deciding. Deciding what? Jack looked at me with his two old eyes. If they're going to take you. I wanted to tell him that was ridiculous. Schoolyard myths. But I was stuck on the phrase just standing around because that was exactly what they were doing. Stay here, I told the kids. Do not come out, I mean it. I found Mark in the kitchen. The kids have heard stories about feral people. Is that what we're talking about? I don't know what we're talking about. I know there are people, things outside our house and they're testing us. Watch. He pointed to the window over the sink. We couldn't see out through the curtain, but we could see the curtain itself. As I watched, a shadow passed in front of it, then another. They were circling the house, close enough to block the ambient starlight. They're checking for weaknesses, Mark whispered. Doors, windows, the crawl space, working together, organized. The fireworks intensified, midnight approaching. In the valleys beyond our property, we could hear people celebrating, shouting, laughing, the sounds of civilization and safety and normalcy. Here we had silence and calculated menace. What do they want? I asked. Us to come outside or to find a way in, I don't. He stopped because we both heard it, a sound from above, on the roof. Something was climbing the house. Mark looked at the ceiling, raised the rifle, then lowered it. Can't shoot without knowing what I'm shooting at, and bullets might not stop them. Them, Mark, what are they? I told you I don't know, but they're not. They don't move right. When they shifted position, I saw one of them. The joints bend wrong. The proportions are off. They look human until you really see them, and then they just aren't. The countdown started. We could hear it echoing from multiple directions, parties and houses miles away, all sync to the same moment. 10, 9, 8, more sounds on the roof, scraping, testing the shingles, the gutters, the chimney. 7, 6, 5. Emma screamed from the bathroom. I ran. She was pointing at the vent near the ceiling, the one that connected to the crawl space for heating. The cover was intact, but behind the slats, something was moving. We could hear it, breathing that wasn't quite breathing. A wet, rhythmic sound. 4, 3, 2. I grabbed both kids and pushed them behind me, putting my body between them and the vent. 1, Happy New Year. The fireworks exploded into their finale. Every valley, every town, every celebration peaking together. The noise was phenomenal, and under cover of that noise they attacked. Everything happened at once. The crawl space assault intensified. I could hear them moving through the confined space beneath the floor, surrounding the bathroom. The roof sounds multiplied. Something hit the front door with massive force. They were testing every entry point simultaneously, using the fireworks to mask the sound. Mark appeared in the bathroom doorway. They're trying to get in, multiple points. I can't cover. The lights went out, total darkness. The power had been cut, or they'd cut it. Jack made a small sound. Emma pressed against my legs. I heard Mark fumbling with his phone, turning on the flashlight. In that light, I saw the bathroom door, and I saw the shadow passing under it, something thin enough to slide through the gap, moving with purpose. Mark saw it too. He stamped down hard, and I heard a sound not quite human, not quite animal. The shadow jerked back, withdrew. We're leaving, Mark said. Now, all of us. We get to the truck, we drive out, we don't stop until we hit the sheriff's office. They're everywhere out there. They're getting in here. Choose. He was right. We couldn't defend against this many, this organized. Our only chance was to run. We moved together through the dark house, Mark leading with the rifle and phone light, me with both kids pressed close. Jack was crying silently. Emma had gone quiet in that way children do when they're beyond scared into survival mode. The front door was closest. Mark checked the window beside it. I saw him tense. They're waiting, right outside, lined up. Back door. He checked, same thing. They know we're going to run, they're ready. Then what? We go fast. Truck is 20 feet from the front door. I go first, get it started. You bring the kids right behind me. Don't look at them, don't stop, just run. It was a terrible plan. It was our only plan. Mark positioned us, hand on the doorknob. On 3, 1, 2, 3. He threw the door open and ran. I followed with the kids, and in the brief seconds of that sprint, I saw them. They'd parted to let us through, formed a corridor from door to truck. Standing there watching us run. I couldn't see faces. Mark's flashlight was pointed forward, but I felt their attention. Their assessment. They were letting us go. Mark got the truck started. We dove into the cab, me in front, kids in back, doors locked, engine roaring. As we pulled away, I looked back once. They stood in our yard, in our driveway, around our house. 30, maybe 40 figures, not following, just watching our tail lights disappear down the road. The sheriff listened to our story with a face that said he'd heard it before. Sent deputies at dawn. They found our house undisturbed. Lights working. No signs of forced entry. No footprints in the yard. But they found other things. Marks on the roof. Scratches in the crawl space. The power line to our house cut cleanly, tool marks visible. Could be vandals, the deputy said, not meeting our eyes. We stayed with my sister for 2 weeks. When we finally went back, the house felt wrong, violated. We found evidence they'd been inside during our absence, items moved, marks on walls, smells we couldn't identify. We listed it for sale in February. Took a loss. Moved to town, subdivision, neighbors close enough to hear us scream. Jack doesn't talk about it. Emma sometimes draws pictures, circles of figures surrounding a house. She never shows them to us, but I find them in the trash. Mark sleeps with the rifle next to the bed. I check the locks compulsively. And every New Year's Eve, we stay somewhere crowded. Hotel, party, anywhere with people and lights and the protective buffer of civilization. Because now we know. When children say there are people in the yard, believe them. Before those people decide you're ready for collection. Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment we were marked. 3:47 p.m. on December 31st, when Jake insisted we take the unmarked fork in the trail to see where it goes. The main trail was boring, he said. Too many families, too predictable. We wanted adventure for our last day of break before spring semester started. We got adventure, just not the kind you tell stories about at parties. There were 4 of us, Jake, Meredith, Chris, and me. All juniors at UVA, all experienced hikers, all convinced we were prepared for anything the Appalachian wilderness could throw at us. We had GPS devices, emergency beacons, enough gear to survive a week if necessary. What we didn't have was the sense to recognize when we'd crossed a boundary we shouldn't have. The unmarked trail started innocently enough. Narrower than the main path, less maintained but clearly used. We found boot prints in the mud, recent ones. See, Jake said triumphantly, people come this way, it's fine. The first sign was how quiet it got. On the main trail, we'd heard birds constantly, squirrels in the branches, the rustle of small animals in the underbrush, the normal soundtrack of a living forest. This trail had none of that, just our boots crunching frozen leaves and our breath misting in the cold afternoon air. The temperature seemed to drop as we went deeper, though that made no sense. We weren't gaining much elevation. Anyone else notice it's weirdly quiet? Meredith asked around 4:15. Probably just the cold, Chris reasoned. Animals bedded down for the night early. But I'd noticed too. And I'd noticed something else. The trees here looked different. Not a different species, just arranged differently. Like they'd been encouraged to grow in certain patterns, creating corridors and clear sightlines in specific directions. The structures appeared at 4:30 p.m. We almost walked past the first one. It was woven into the branches overhead, a construction of sticks, bones, and materials I couldn't identify. Roughly spherical, maybe 3 feet across, positioned about 12 feet up. The craftsmanship was intricate, deliberate. What the hell is that? Jake stopped, craning his neck. Bird nest. Meredith suggested without conviction. Birds don't use bones, I pointed out. because I could see them clearly, small animal skulls woven into the structure, whitened by weather, ribs bent and laced through branches, vertebrae strung like beads. Art installation. Chris tried. Someone's weird project. But there were more. As we continued, because Jake insisted it was just weird locals and we'd come this far, we saw them everywhere. Different sizes, different heights, all sharing that same intricate weaving pattern, all incorporating bones. They marked territory, I realized later. Boundary markers, warning signs. We'd been too stupid to read them. The footprints changed around 5:00 p.m. The boot prints we'd been following joined with others. Barefoot prints. Human-sized, human-shaped, but wrong. The toes spread too wide. The pressure distribution was off, more weight on the outside edge, like the foot had a different bone structure. And there were so many of them. Crisscrossing the trail, disappearing into the underbrush, converging on certain trees, and then dispersing. Like a highway system for things that didn't wear shoes in December. "We should head back," I said, not suggesting, stating. "It's just locals," Jake insisted, but his voice had lost its confidence. "Mountain people, they live different." "Mountain people wear boots in winter," Meredith countered. This is something else." We'd been hiking for about 90 minutes on the unmarked trail. The sun was getting low, temperature dropping further. We had maybe an hour of good daylight left. "Fine," Jake conceded. "We head back. But let's check what's around this next bend. I hear water. Probably a cool waterfall or something." That's when we felt them watching, not saw, felt. That primitive awareness that comes from deep in your brainstem, the part that knows when a predator has noticed you. The hair on my neck stood up, my stomach clenched. "Someone's watching us," Meredith whispered. We all stopped, looked around. The forest was darkening rapidly under the canopy. Shadows pooled between trees. Underbrush created 1,000 hiding places. At first, I saw nothing. Then my eyes adjusted and I realized one of the shadows was wrong. Too vertical, too still. There was someone standing in the trees about 50 yards to our left, just standing there, facing us. "Hello," Chris called out. His voice sounded too loud, too intrusive. The figure didn't respond, didn't move. "We're lost," Chris tried again. "Can you help us get back to the main trail?" Nothing, just that perfect, unnatural stillness. "Fuck this," Jake said. "We're leaving now." We turned back the way we'd come, walking fast. Not running, some instinct told us running would be a mistake, but moving with purpose. The feeling of being watched intensified. I kept glancing over my shoulder. The figure was following. Not close, maintaining the same 50-yard distance, but definitely following. "Don't look at it," I said quietly. "Just keep moving." Meredith's voice climbed. "Why did you say it instead of them?" Because I'd gotten a better look, and while the shape was human, something about the proportions was wrong. The arms hung too long. The head sat at a wrong angle on the shoulders. We walked for 10 minutes, the figure paced us. Then I noticed movement to our right, another one. Same distance, same silent trailing. "There are two," Chris said, confirming my observation. 5 minutes later, there were 4. They were coordinating, flanking us. Not attacking, not approaching, just following, observing. Like we were interesting specimens that warranted study. The light was failing fast now. In 15 minutes, it would be too dark to navigate without flashlights. And something told me we did not want to be out here after dark. "How far to the main trail?" Meredith asked. 20 minutes at this pace, I estimated. Maybe 30. We weren't going to make it in daylight. At 5:45 p.m., the followers closed the distance. Now they were 30 yards away instead of 50. Still not approaching directly, but the circle was tightening. I could see them more clearly in the fading light. They wore clothing, scraps and pieces anyway. Stitched together materials that might have once been jackets, pants, shirts. All filthy, all weathered. Their hair was long and matted. Their skin was deeply tanned, almost leather-like. But it was the way they moved that was worst. Between trees, they'd go low, almost on all fours, but not quite. Then they'd straighten up behind cover. Their joints seemed to bend at extra places, or maybe just differently than human joints should. "Don't stop," Jake urged. Keep going. We'd been hiking for 45 minutes back toward the main trail. Should be getting close, but nothing looked familiar. The trail seemed different than it had on the way in. I think they herded us, Chris said quietly. I think when we were distracted, they made us take wrong turns. He was right. I recognized nothing. We were lost, being followed by an unknown number of things that looked almost human, and we had maybe 5 minutes of usable daylight left. We camp, I decided. Here, now, set up the tent, get a fire going, wait for dawn. Are you insane? Meredith hissed, with them out there. We can't navigate in the dark. We'll fall, get more lost. At least with fire and light, we can see them coming. It was terrible logic. It was our only option. We set up camp with hands that shook, got the tent erected, one small 2-person tent that wouldn't fit all of us but would give the appearance of shelter. Started a fire with the emergency lighter, fed it every burnable thing we could quickly gather. As the fire grew, I saw them more clearly. There were 8 now, arranged in a loose circle around our camp, maybe 40 feet out, just standing there, watching. What do they want? Chris asked. To see what we do, I said. How we react, what our capabilities are. You're talking about them like they're intelligent. Look at them, they're coordinating. Communicating, look, that one just made a gesture and 2 others shifted position. They're not animals, they're something else. We took turns keeping watch while others tried to rest. None of us slept. How could we, with those figures standing vigil around us, never moving, never speaking, just observing with whatever thoughts moved through their minds? Around 8:00 p.m., they started making sounds, not words, vocalizations. Clicks and grunts and sounds that came from deep in the chest. They were talking to each other, planning something. At 9:00 p.m., one of them approached. Just walked forward until it was at the edge of our firelight, maybe 15 feet away, close enough that I could see its face. It had been human once, or was human still, technically, but years in the wilderness had changed it. The eyes were wrong, adapted to darkness, maybe, or just empty of anything I recognized as human consciousness. The face was lean to the point of emaciation. The teeth, when its mouth opened in something like a smile, were damaged and irregular. It tilted its head, studying us. Then it made a sound, a perfect imitation of a cell phone ringing. We all jumped. Meredith made a small scream. The thing seemed pleased by our reaction. It made other sounds, a car horn, a doorbell, a dog barking, all perfect mimicry, showing off its skills. Then it spoke. The words were slurred, unpracticed, like it had forgotten how to shape human language, but I understood them. Stay, trail. It turned and walked back into the darkness. The message was clear. We'd violated their space, ignored the warnings. They could have harmed us. Had the numbers, the home advantage, the element of surprise. But they were giving us a pass, this time, as long as we learned the lesson. We kept the fire going all night. The watchers gradually withdrew, though I never saw them actually leave. They were just less present as the hours passed. By 3:00 a.m., I couldn't see them anymore, though I felt they were still out there. Dawn came at 6:30 a.m. on New Year's Day. We packed up in record time, didn't bother with breakfast. Followed our own tracks back the way we'd come, and this time, without the watchers hurting us, we found the main trail within 20 minutes. The transition was stark. One moment we were in that quiet, watched forest. The next, we were on the maintained trail with its marker posts and distant sounds of other hikers and normal bird calls. We hiked out without speaking. Made it to the parking lot by 9:00 a.m. Drove straight back to campus. We never reported it. What would we say? That we saw mountain people who herded us off trail and watched us all night. That we'd ignored warning signs and were let go with a message. We'd sound insane, but Jake never suggested off-trail adventures again. Chris dropped his outdoor adventure minor. Meredith refuses to hike anywhere without staying on marked, crowded paths. And me, I did research. Found stories, local legends, scattered reports. People living deep in the mountains, descended from those who fled civilization generations ago, or maybe never were civilized. Communities that didn't want contact, didn't want intrusion, and had their own ways of enforcing boundaries. The bone structures we saw. Territorial markers recognized by those who know. The unmarked trails, not public paths, private roads through private land belonging to people who don't file deeds or pay taxes or acknowledge government authority. We'd been trespassers, tourists stumbling into someone else's home. They could have made us disappear, and maybe others haven't been as lucky or as respectful as we tried to be, but they gave us a chance to learn. Stay trail. I do now, always. The marked paths are marked for a reason. The boundaries are there for a reason. There are parts of Appalachia that aren't public land, no matter what the maps say. Parts that belong to people who were there long before maps existed, who have their own rules, their own ways, their own tolerance limits. We found the edge of their patience. We were shown mercy. Not everyone is. Every New Year's Eve, I think about them. Celebrate indoors in cities far from mountains and forests and unmarked trails. Wonder if they're out there in their territory, living according to patterns I'll never understand. Wonder if they remember us. The 4 stupid college kids who ignored the warnings but learned the lesson. I hope they do. I hope if anyone else stumbles into that area, those watchers remember that some trespassers can be taught. That some of us will respect the boundaries once we understand they exist. Because the alternative, what happens to those who don't learn, who push further, who treat the warnings as challenges, that's something I don't want to imagine. Some trails stay unmarked for a reason. Stay on the marked ones. Trust me. The first sound isn't the worst. It's the third or fourth when you realize they're learning. That's when the fear sets in. I've lived in these mountains for 43 years. Moved here in 1982 with my husband Tom, bought 10 acres at the end of a dirt road 3 miles from our nearest neighbor. People said we were crazy, too isolated, too far from help. Tom passed in 2019. I stayed. This was our place, our dream. The isolation didn't bother me. I knew every sound these mountains made. The scream of a bobcat that sounds like a woman dying. The grunting of black bears marking territory. The death shriek of a rabbit in an owl's talons. The warning calls of crows and the territorial displays of ravens. What I heard on New Year's Eve wasn't any of those. It started at 8:00 p.m. I was in my armchair reading, wood stove keeping the house warm. The radio played classical music, the only station that came in clearly this far out. Outside, the world was still and cold, temperature hovering around 15 degrees. Then I heard my name. Margaret. My exact name in Tom's exact voice. The way he used to call me from the back porch when dinner was ready. That specific tone, affectionate, slightly impatient, distinctly his. I looked up from my book. The radio played on. The house was empty except for me. Margaret, come here. From outside. From the tree line, maybe 40 yards from the house. I didn't move, didn't go to the window, didn't turn on the porch light. You learn things when you live this far out. First rule, if something sounds too familiar, it's not. Tom had been dead for 6 years. Whatever was using his voice wasn't him. I stayed in my chair and kept reading, or pretended to. My eyes scanned the same paragraph over and over while I listened. Silence for 5 minutes. Then, Margaret, I need help. Still Tom's voice, now with an edge of distress. The tone he'd used when he threw his back out that time when he really did need my help getting up. My hand tightened on the book. Don't react, don't respond, don't acknowledge. 5 more minutes. Then laughter, Tom's laugh, the one he'd give when he was genuinely amused. The sound I hadn't heard in over 6 years and still missed with an ache that never quite faded. They were cycling through his voice. Testing different approaches. Seeing what would make me come outside. At 8:30, they moved on to other sounds. A baby crying. Not Tom, not anyone I knew, but universally effective. The sound evolved to trigger protective instincts to override rational thought. I could feel my body wanting to respond, to investigate, to help. I stayed seated, turned up the radio to mask it. The crying stopped, replaced by a dog whimpering. Injured, scared, needing help. Again, designed to exploit empathy. Again, I didn't move. A car horn. Long blast, the kind that means emergency. Then a cell phone ringing, the generic tone everyone recognizes. They were running through a catalog of sounds, each one calibrated to make me open the door, make me come outside, make me investigate. By 9:00 p.m., I'd heard a dozen different sounds, all perfect replications, all designed to manipulate. I turned off the radio, needed to hear what was happening without the masking noise. The house was silent except for the crackling of the wood stove. From outside, nothing. They'd stopped. 5 minutes of silence. 10. 15. Then they started the sounds I'd never heard before. Complex vocalizations that seemed to come from multiple directions at once. Not words, not animal calls, something else. Layered harmonics that made my windows vibrate. Deep frequencies I felt in my chest before I heard them with my ears. They were communicating, not with me, with each other. I was listening to a conversation in a language that shouldn't exist. The sounds had patterns, call and response, different pitches from different locations, sometimes overlapping in ways that created new sounds altogether. There was structure to it. Grammar, maybe. Syntax, whatever was out there wasn't mindless. This was intelligent communication. At 10:00 p.m., they stopped again, another period of silence. This was their pattern, I realized. Cycles of activity and quiet, testing and waiting, assessing my responses. I used the silence to prepare. Checked that every door was locked, every window secure, closed all the curtains, no need to give them a view inside. Brought my late husband's shotgun from the bedroom, loaded it, kept it across my lap. Not because I thought it would stop them, but because having a weapon was psychologically comforting, even if logically useless. At 10:30, they tried a new approach, my daughter's voice. "Mom, are you there? It's Sarah." Sarah lives in Charlotte. We talk every Sunday. I knew she wasn't here, wasn't outside my house at 10:30 p.m. on New Year's Eve, but they'd replicated her voice perfectly. The tone, the cadence, the slight upturn at the end of questions. "Mom, I'm lost. I drove up to surprise you and got turned around on the dirt roads. Can you turn on the porch light so I can find the house?" Clever, very clever. A scenario that was almost plausible. A request that seemed reasonable. "Mom, please, it's really cold." I stayed silent, stayed still. Sarah was in Charlotte, this was manipulation. "Mom, why aren't you answering? I can see the house. I'm right outside. Please open the door." The voice was getting closer, moving from the tree line toward the house. I could track its position by sound. "Fine, I'll just use my key." I didn't give Sarah a key, she'd never had one. The house was too far from her life for emergency access to make sense. But the thing outside didn't know that, it was guessing. Testing to see if the threat of entry would make me react. I heard the doorknob rattle. Something was trying it. Testing the lock. The door held. The rattling stopped. Silence again. At 11:00 p.m., I heard my own voice from outside. That was disturbing on a level I wasn't prepared for. My voice saying things I'd never said. Having a conversation with itself, questions and answers in my own tone, my own speech patterns. They'd been listening. For how long? Hours, days, long enough to catalog my voice, learn its characteristics, replicate it with accuracy. I was hearing myself from outside my own body. My voice discussing mundane things, the weather, the garden, plans for tomorrow. Like two of me were chatting on the porch. Then my voice said, "I should go inside now, it's getting cold." And the other voice, also mine, responded, "Yes, good idea, unlock the door." They were problem-solving. If they couldn't lure me out, maybe they could sound like me unlocking the door from inside, make me think I was sleepwalking or confused. Create enough doubt that I'd question my own perceptions. At 11:30, the fireworks started. Distant valleys echoing with celebration. Towns and communities counting down to midnight. The normal sounds of civilization enjoying its rituals. And the things outside joined in. Every explosion was mimicked within seconds. Not just copied, enhanced. They added harmonics, created layers, built complexity on top of simple bang and whistle. They were showing off now, demonstrating their capabilities. A firecracker pop from the valley would be replicated outside my house as a complex symphony of pops, each slightly different in pitch and timing. A bottle rocket's whistle became a chorus of whistles in harmony. They were making art, or something like it, taking our sounds and proving they could do it better. At 11:55, 5 minutes before midnight, everything stopped. Total silence. No fireworks yet from the valleys, they were waiting for midnight. No sounds from outside, just the crackle of my wood stove and my own breathing. I waited. At 11:59, the countdown started echoing from distant towns. Hundreds of voices in unison. 10, 9, 8. I heard movement outside, multiple sources. They were repositioning. 7, 6, 5. They were gathering closer to the house. I could feel it. That prey animal sense of being surrounded. 4, 3, 2. I gripped the shotgun, not to use, just to hold. To remind myself I wasn't completely helpless. 1, Happy New Year. The valleys erupted. Fireworks, shouting, horns, gunshots, every noisemaker humanity had invented all at once. The roar was tremendous even from miles away. And outside my house, they joined in. Every sound was replicated simultaneously. The noise was overwhelming. My windows rattled. My dishes clinked in the cupboards. The sheer volume was physically oppressive. But underneath it, in the gaps between sounds, I heard them communicating. Their vocalizations woven into the celebration sounds. Coordinating, planning. The chaos continued for 5 minutes. 10, 15. The valleys were winding down, fireworks becoming sporadic. The things outside maintained full volume. They weren't tired, weren't running out of ammunition like the towns. They could keep making noise indefinitely. At 12:30 a.m., they finally stopped. Silence crashed down like a physical weight. My ears rang. My head ached. I waited for what came next. What came was a single sound. One voice, not human, not animal. Their true voice, not mimicry. A long, complex vocalization that rose and fell, that carried harmonics I could feel vibrating in my bones. It was beautiful, terrible, utterly alien. And when it ended, I understood what they'd been doing. They'd been showing off, demonstrating their abilities, proving their intelligence, reminding me that this far out, with no neighbors to hear, they could make any sound they wanted. Could be anyone's voice. Could replicate anything, including mine. The message was clear. We can sound like you, can pretend to be you, can call for help in your voice while you're trapped inside. No one would know the difference. Stay afraid. Stay isolated. Stay aware of what we can do. At 1:00 a.m., I heard them withdrawing. Moving back into the forest. Not all at once, gradually in groups. By 2:00 a.m., I heard nothing. By 3:00 a.m., I believed they were actually gone. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't sleep the next night either. Kept every light on, every door locked, that shotgun within reach. On January 2nd, I drove into town. Told some neighbors I'd heard weird sounds on New Year's Eve. Asked if anyone else had. The looks I got told me they had, but no one wanted to talk about it. Rural mountain folk have an understanding. Some things you don't discuss. Some things you just live with. I called Sarah that Sunday like always. Didn't mention what happened. What would I say? That something used her voice to try to lure me outside. She'd worry. Insist I move to Charlotte. And I'm not leaving. This is my home, my land. I've been here 43 years. But I've learned. I keep the curtains closed after dark now. I don't respond to sounds from outside, no matter how familiar. I installed motion sensor lights around the house, not because light stops them, but because it helps me see what's real. And I've accepted the truth. I'm not alone out here. I share this space with something else. Something that watches, learns, and demonstrates its capabilities on certain nights. New Year's Eve, solstices, harvest moon, they have their calendar, their schedule. I have mine. On those nights, I stay inside. I keep the sounds of civilization playing, radio, TV, anything that masks the sounds from outside. I don't engage, don't respond, don't acknowledge. And they tolerate me. So far, it's an understanding. I respect their space, their nights, their demonstrations of power. They don't try too hard to lure me out. They keep their distance most of the year. But every New Year's Eve, they come back. And the sounds get more complex, more accurate, more personalized. They're still learning, still studying. I wonder sometimes what they'll do when they've learned enough. When they've cataloged every sound in my life, replicated every voice I know. Will they still let me stay? Or will this uneasy coexistence end? I don't know, but I'm not leaving. This is my home, even if I'm not the only one who thinks so. The assignment seemed perfect. Small-town New Year traditions in rural Appalachia. A feel-good piece for the lifestyle magazine I freelanced for. Human interest, local color, the kind of content that makes readers nostalgic for simpler times. I'd found Pine Ridge through a tourism website, population 47, established 1843, proud of its heritage and traditional celebrations. The town clerk I'd emailed was enthusiastic. Please come. We'd love to share our New Year's Eve gathering with a writer. It's very special. I arrived at 5:00 p.m. on December 31st. The town was a cluster of buildings tucked into a mountain valley, one main street, maybe 20 structures total. Post office, general store, community center, a handful of houses. Everything old but well-maintained. The people were welcoming. Too welcoming, maybe. Within minutes of parking, I was surrounded by friendly faces introducing themselves, asking about my drive, insisting I come directly to the community center where preparations were underway. "We start early," explained Mayor Hendricks, a weathered woman in her 60s. "Party begins at 6. Everyone comes." "Everyone?" I asked, all 47 residents. "Everyone," she confirmed. "It's tradition. No one stays home on New Year's Eve." Inside the community center, I found a scene of festive activity. Tables being set up, food being prepared, decorations being hung. But as I watched, I noticed the decorations were unusual. They weren't commercial party supplies. They were handmade, and not in a charming craft project way. In a deliberate, traditional way. Specific herbs bundled with red thread hung above every door and window. Patterns painted on the walls, not decorative flourishes but precise geometric designs. Symbols I didn't recognize chalked on the floor near entryways. "Old traditions," Mayor Hendricks said when she saw me examining them. "Passed down through generations. We're very protective of our heritage." "What do they mean?" I asked, taking notes. "Protection, blessing, keeping bad things out." She smiled, but her eyes didn't match the expression. "Just old superstitions, really, but we maintain them. Better safe than sorry." Protection from what? I didn't ask. Didn't want to seem rude on my first day. But I photographed everything, documentation for my article. The party officially started at 6:00 p.m. Within 15 minutes, all 47 residents had arrived. I counted to verify. The community center was full, adults, elderly, a handful of teenagers, even 3 small children. "Does everyone really come every year?" I asked a younger woman named Bate. "Everyone," she confirmed. Her smile was tight. "No exceptions." "What if someone's sick, or—" "We bring them, literally carry them if necessary. Everyone gathers together in one place." She glanced at the windows as she spoke, then back to me. "It's tradition." The food was good, traditional mountain cooking, potluck style. The people were friendly, engaging me in conversation, asking about my life in Richmond, genuinely interested. But there was a distracted quality to their attention. People kept checking watches, glancing at windows, maintaining awareness of the time in a way that seemed excessive for a party that wouldn't peak until midnight. At 7:00 p.m., someone turned off half the lights. "Saves electricity," Mayor Hendricks explained, "and we prefer the ambience." But the remaining lights were positioned specifically, illuminating the interior while making the windows darker, making it harder to see in from outside while preserving visibility inside. At 7:30, I casually walked toward the front door, intending to get something from my car. "Where are you going?" Bate appeared next to me instantly. "Just to my car. I have extra batteries for my camera." "I'll get them for you. Keys." I can. Please, you're our guest. Her hand was already out. Her smile was pleasant. Her eyes were insistent. I gave her the keys. She went outside, came back 90 seconds later with my camera bag, handed me my keys. I noticed she'd locked the community center door behind her when she came back in. At 8:00 p.m., I asked about the fireworks I'd been promised in our email exchanges. Fireworks? Mayor Hendricks looked confused. You mentioned your New Year's celebration includes a fireworks display. I was hoping to photograph it. Oh, we don't do fireworks. Never have. Too dangerous in a dry climate. Where did you hear that? Your email. You specifically mentioned. I must have been thinking of something else. No fireworks here. Too much noise. Noise attracts attention, she'd almost said. I saw the words form and then get redirected. Too much noise attracts. What? At 9:00 p.m., the atmosphere changed. The conversation continued, but everyone's attention shifted. They were listening to something beyond the room, waiting. I moved to a window, trying to look out. The glass was dark. The lights inside made it reflective. I could see the room behind me, but nothing outside. Better stay away from the windows, someone said quietly. An elderly man whose name I'd forgotten. His hand gently guided me back toward the center of the room. Why? They show your silhouette, makes you visible from outside. Why does that matter? He didn't answer, just patted my shoulder and moved away. At 10:00 p.m., I tried using my phone. No service expected this far out. But when I asked if anyone had a landline I could use to check in with my editor, people exchanged looks. Lines are down, Mayor Hendricks said. Winter weather happens every year around the holidays. But there had been no weather, clear skies all day, and the way she said it practiced like a rehearsed excuse. My editor will worry if I don't check in, I pushed. You can call in the morning. Lines are usually restored by dawn. Dawn, specific time frame, like she knew exactly when service would resume. At 10:30, a child started crying. One of the three, a girl maybe 6 years old. I want to go home, she sobbed. I don't like party night. SHH, her mother soothed. We stay together, remember, we stay safe when we're together. But they're outside. SHA. The mother carried the child to a back room and I heard the crying muffle. Everyone else had gone very quiet, not acknowledging what the child had said. They're outside. I moved casually toward Mayor Hendricks, kept my voice low. What's going on? What's outside? She studied me, deciding something. You're a guest here. We want you safe. The best way to stay safe is to not ask questions and to not go outside until dawn. Can you do that? I don't understand. You don't need to understand. You need to trust us. We've done this for generations. We know how to survive New Year's Eve. You don't. Survive, not celebrate, survive. If there's danger, I should call. Call who? Police are 40 minutes away on a good day. This isn't danger you call about. This is danger you wait out. She softened slightly. I'm sorry we weren't more clear in our invitation. We're protective of our situation. People who don't live here don't understand. They think we're crazy or making things up, so we've learned to be discreet. What comes on New Year's Eve? She looked around. No one was listening. They were all engaged in loud conversations, deliberately giving us privacy. Things that live in the mountains, things that don't like people but tolerate us as long as we follow the rules. What things? Doesn't matter what you call them. What matters is they're territorial, and New Year's Eve is one of their nights. They come down from high country, circle the populated areas, make sure we're not expanding, not encroaching. As long as we stay inside, stay together, stay quiet, they observe and move on. And if someone's outside? Her face answered before her words did. We don't go outside. At 11:00 p.m., I heard something hit the building. Not hard, a soft thump against the exterior wall, then another, then several in sequence circling the structure. They were touching the building, walking around it, testing it. Everyone in the community center had gone silent. Even the children were quiet now, huddled with parents. All of us listening to the sounds of inspection happening outside. Mayor Hendricks had moved to the center of the room, and I realized everyone was arranged strategically. The elderly and children were innermost. The younger adults formed a loose outer circle, facing the windows and doors. This wasn't a party, this was a defensive position. At 11:30, someone looked out a window, an older teenage boy too curious for his own good. He went pale, stepped back quickly. "How many?" his father asked. 20, maybe more, they're just standing there in a circle around the building. No one panicked. This was expected. They'd seen it before. "Same as last year," Mayor Hendricks said. "They'll watch until dawn. As long as we don't provoke them, don't go outside, don't give them reason to approach, they'll leave when light comes." I couldn't help myself. I moved toward the window. 3 people intercepted me. "Don't," Bates said. "Don't let them see your face clearly, don't make eye contact." "Why?" "Because then they'll remember you specifically. And if you ever come back, they'll know." But I'd already seen. In the gap between curtains and the ambient starlight, I saw them, human-shaped, standing in a rough circle around the community center, motionless. Even from a distance, I could tell something was wrong with their proportions, wrong with the way they stood. They weren't there to celebrate. They were there to monitor, to count, to make sure their territory wasn't being violated. The countdown began at 11:59, not celebratory, almost whispered. The whole town counting down in unison, but quietly, like we didn't want to draw attention. 10, 9, 8. The figures outside remained motionless. 7, 6, 5. I could see them more clearly now, weathered clothing, long hair. Postures that suggested strength and patience in equal measure. 4, 3, 2, 1. No one said Happy New Year. We just stood there waiting from outside, nothing, no response, no reaction. 5 minutes passed, 10. Then the figures began moving, not toward us, away, withdrawing back toward the tree line. Within 15 minutes, they'd vanished into darkness. "They're gone," someone said. "Not gone," Mayor Hendricks corrected. "Just finished. We passed inspection. They'll be back next year." The tension didn't break. No one celebrated. People simply waited, continuing their quiet vigil until the first hint of dawn showed at 6:30 a.m. Only then did Mayor Hendricks unlock the doors. "You can leave now if you want," she told me. "Most of us will stay until full daylight, but you're free to go." This happens every year. Every year, sometimes other nights too, solstices, certain moon phases, but always New Year's Eve, always have, far as our records show, since the town was founded. "Why don't you leave? Move somewhere else?" "This is our home. Our families have been here for generations. We've learned to coexist. We follow the rules. They leave us alone most of the year. It's an arrangement." I left at 7:00 a.m. as soon as I trusted the roads in dawn light. Drove straight back to Richmond without stopping. I wrote the article. Made it about charming small-town traditions, close-knit communities, the importance of heritage. Didn't mention the figures. Didn't mention the fear. Didn't mention the